So greetings, friends, Cornellians, engineers, and welcome to this College of Engineering broadcast coming to you live from Ithaca, New York, December 8th, 2020. Thank you for joining us today on our little corner of the internet here in Ithaca, New York. And we have much to offer you. My name is Tony Simeone, and I am proud to work in the College of Engineering in Ithaca. We're joining you from Ithaca and San Diego, because in a moment here, we're going to be talking with Cornell Engineering alumnus Tony Grillo some more about his career, his time at Cornell, and about how his company has adapted to the COVID crisis. We hope for your active participation as we talk with Tony. And we will look for your questions in the Q&A interface below. So if you look below, if you move your mouse around, you'll see below there's the chat and there's the Q&A. If you've done a lot of Zoom, you might be accustomed to interacting via chat, but in this format, we will request that you use the Q&A. It just helps us keep track. Oh, and please, when you do submit an answer, if you can remember to tell us who you are, your graduation year, and your major. And with that said, I am very glad to introduce our Cornell alumnus that we're featuring tonight, Tony Grillo, class of '88, joining us from La Jolla. Tony.
Hey, thanks, Tony. Thanks for the introduction. Really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here, and I hope to be able to answer some good and interesting questions for you.
Yeah. Well, I know you're an interesting guy. Tony and I have known each other for a couple of years now. And when we asked him to do this, I was so glad you were able to say yes. So since we're a little behind here, we'll just dive right in. And I'd love to just talk about, we're going to get to one really interesting thing that you shared with me was how your current company, which is a distillery, pivoted to help with the COVID crisis and possibly find a business model that might help you survive and thrive in the COVID crisis. Interested to get to that. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask about Cornell and you. How did you find your way to Cornell?
That's actually really great question. So as a young kid growing up in Puerto Rico, I had three neighbors that went to Cornell. All engineers, electrical engineers. And they were very influential as I was growing up, and not influential sometimes in a good way. I mean, we all tended to get in trouble together and
older kids, not like your friends' dads, older kids.
Yeah, just kids, yeah. So they were a little bit older. They, like I said, they all went to Cornell. And from a young age, that's all I wanted to do was go to Cornell. I thought it was, just this mythical school that was great, and I needed to go there. So when I applied, I only applied to 4 schools, and miraculously I got into Cornell and didn't even need to know about anything else. I mean, that's where I was going. So I was totally stoked about that.
So this was 1983 you matriculated in 84. So it was 1983. And where were you in Puerto Rico?
Well, actually at that time I had moved to Michigan. My family had moved to Michigan. I did 4 years of high school in Michigan as my dad started to work for Warner Lambert Park Davis at the time. I had not entirely lost touch with those friends from Puerto Rico, but we were not, they were a little bit older, so we were not always in touch. But I don't know why it lingered with me that Cornell was a school for me. And
especially being in Michigan, if you knew you were going to do engineering.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some stiff competition over there.
No, absolutely. I mean, Michigan, like Cornell is a very good school. My father was faculty at Michigan. But, I growing up in that town versus, what I had read and seen of Cornell, I thought Cornell was a better fit overall. Yeah.
And when you got to Cornell, how did you find the culture there? Was it challenging?
Not at all. I thought everybody was very friendly. I mean, I think, we were all freshmen, all together, all in the same boat, trying to figure it all out. So overall, I was happy that people were helpful, cooperative. It wasn't, it was a great environment overall. I mean, I did not feel any animosity at any point.
Even the faculty?
Yeah.
I say that because I work with a lot of alumni, and I've heard that the 80s were a time I mean, there was some tough nuts to crack on the faculty.
Yeah, there were certainly some tough professors, very strict, and but I also had some great professors. I mean, I remember I probably have a few really good memories of professors, but one of them was I think it was Dr. Kelly, who happens to be he was electrical engineering, I believe. Well, I know he was electrical engineering at the time, but he taught EE 101, which is a very basic intro course, and he was fantastic. I mean, just really personable. I mean, just it was a big auditorium class, so there was nothing.
Was it in Phillips 101?
I think so. Yeah.
Sounds right. For EE in that era. Yeah.
So, and it was fantastic the way he conveyed his thoughts and the class. He made it enjoyable, which a lot of other classes were drier and just more to the point. So I remember that class fondly as one where I learned a ton, and in particular because it was not even in my major per se.
Right.
But it was just like very, very good class. But I mean, I had
what was your major, Tony?
So I was a mechanical engineer, and in the Sibley School. I remember my advisor as well. I mean, he and I had some long talks. He was heavily into injection molding, and I mean, he would break down injection molding into the littlest, tiniest details, and he'd love to banter back and forth about it, which was, for me, it was excellent. I mean, it was all a learning opportunity.
And you went into manufacturing ultimately. So was that always your goal?
I always had wanted to be in automotive engineering. And that was kind of my objective. I didn't know exactly what I would do, whether it would be design or operations based. And the opportunity arose where I could start working in a plant for a supplier, OEM supplier, a company called Johnson Controls. And that was a couple of years after I had already left Cornell. I had a job before that. And I took that. I thought that was really interesting. My first job out of Cornell was also very interesting, working for a small military contractor, making parts for nuclear submarines and Dresser-Rand, making turbines for jet engines. And that was fascinating. I mean, I love the design side, but I think I was more passionate about manufacturing and operations in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting path. So your first job put you in a position to apply for that next job? How did you hear about the Johnson job?
Well, actually, and this is one of my philosophies in life. I mean, I think you need to be flexible and look at opportunities as they come along. What led me to Johnson Controls was my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife, was involved in a
Cornell alumna.
Cornell alumni, absolutely,
yeah.
Class of '89.
Well done.
And hopefully she's listening. So she was involved in a car accident, and I was finishing a master's and working at the same time, and decided that I needed to be closer. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time, and just started looking at openings, and this one came up, and I applied, and a week later I interviewed, and a week later I had a job offer. So wow. It happened very quickly, and I had an excellent career with Johnson Controls. I spent 13 years there, and it's funny. I don't know if I can interrupt or not, but we got a Q&A from my old roommate in college, from Solomon. Anyway, hi to everybody that class of '88 or '89 that I knew. So anyway,
we've got two questions, and they're both about you going into the distillery. Maybe we're focusing too much on engineering for your engineering friends.
Yeah, they want to know more about drinking.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so I ended up in Michigan because of Janet, and that career was fantastic. I spent 13 years at Johnson Controls. I started working in the shop floor and then ended up as an executive director. And it was
that's interesting to me, and because that's a really interesting moment in a technical education to take your undergraduate and then your MN, which you said you got at Penn State. I think you said, right?
Yep.
This is from a previous conversation. To then be able to pivot and to get into a leadership and a management position. I mean, that's a big step up. I mean, it's an unrelated skill set. Do you remember that transition, and what was that like?
Yeah, I do. I was fortunate enough to be mentored by a gentleman called Keith Wandell, who ended up being the CEO of Johnson Controls. Later on, was the CEO of Harley Davidson. Highly intelligent and skilled guy, and he mentored me, and he helped me walk through all the steps. I mean, they put me on an accelerated management program where I was able to see many different phases of the company by working in different jobs for about a year or so, 6 months. I mean, I had exposure to many things that normally would take years to achieve. And I mean, I got to my last position. Let's see, I was probably only 8 years into the company. I was 34 years old, and most of my peers were in their late 40s, early 50s. So I mean, I got there very fast.
And you said that the CEO went on to be the head of the big motorcycle company.
Yeah, Harley Davidson.
That is whoever took that job 20 years ago, which is what we're talking about, has done a pretty incredible job. So this is somebody who had a lot of success ahead of him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he
must have been nice to work with.
Yeah, he was extremely intelligent, very quick, very smart. He took Johnson Controls from about 20 billion to about 30 billion. Wow. And then he when he went to Harley Davidson, which is after he retired from Johnson Controls, he was able to turn that around and into a profitable entity that is now has survived what was essentially a near bankruptcy experience.
Oh, it's a cultural juggernaut too. So they've done a great job over there. Well, it sounds like everybody's interested in the distillery conversation. We've got a lot more to talk about, but why don't we ask that question? So Victor Seidel, forgive me, Victor, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, asks, when you decided to get into spirits, how did you learn about the industry and know how to get started? And then Salomon Cohen, who was your roommate, do you remember what building you were in, roommates?
Oh yeah, we started out in Sheldon Court together, and then we moved as literal roommates into Eddie Gate.
Oh, that's great! Wow.
Which are still both there, by the way.
Oh yeah. If you haven't been back to engineering, please come. Well, not right now, but soon. So that's a good question. How did you learn about the industry? Why don't you tell us the story of becoming a distiller?
Well, so I had a neighbor across the street, Tom, who, if you go to our website, you'll see him. He's the taller guy. And he had been talking about going into business for a long time. And, he and I were gym partners and friends. I mean, we did camping with our daughters and families and stuff. And I kept saying, it's like, you just keep talking. I mean, are we going to do something? You're going to do something. And he had been talking about the distillery. And a friend of his whom I met just about a year before that, Ken. And he kind of went radio silent for a couple months as far as that was concerned. And then both of them approached me. They said they actually wanted to take the next steps and do the distillery. They had done all their research and showed me all their business plans. We kind of fine-tuned them a little bit, talked to some more people in the industry. And my role in the organization was to bring the business side and the operational side into the fray, so to speak. So they had the knowledge about the industry, the passion. I had more the operational skill, meaning I could help with building the plant, running the plant organizational stuff. And I was, of the two of them, I had a lot more experience as far as owning my own businesses. And they needed that in order to be able to launch the company successfully.
It seems like your heritage made you a natural fit for a rum distillery. Was rum the primary product at the beginning?
Rum was our first product for sure. All along we intended to make whiskeys as well. But because of the aging process, rum was actually our first product that came out the door. So we actually became known as a rum distillery, but our intent was always to make whiskeys, and we did. We were barreling whiskey side by side with rum. It's just that rum came out first. And you're right. I mean, you would think that because I'm Puerto Rican, rum would be a natural progression. But honestly, I had never thought about whether rum or whiskey would come because of that heritage. With that said, though, I mean, I do have a lot of family that appreciate rum and know a lot about rum. So I was able to bounce ideas off of them and try to figure out how to make the best product that we could, which was a lengthy process. I mean, my partners and I spent 6 months essentially in the distillery, but more in a laboratory type operation, testing pretty much every type of molasses we could get our hands on, testing every type of yeast that we could get our hands on, and we had this big experiment. I mean, there's a matrix, if you can imagine, with yeast versus molasses versus different types of fermentation processes. So it was very intensive, and it was very interesting.
You've got to get that product dialed in. You've got to get it on point. But the question that Victor Seidel poses is, how did you learn about the industry? I mean, this is a very different industry than any business. I mean, we didn't get into your middle career yet, but I mean, you're talking about, producing a consumable product. I mean, it's a very different animal than what you typical engineering manufacturing. How did you do the business side of that?
Well, actually, for us, none of us, I mean, we had never been in that business. So, and you're absolutely right. I mean, Victor brings up a great point. The laws for liquor are very archaic. Yeah. I mean, they date back to the 1930s when the 21st Amendment was repealed. The laws are just archaic. So they have a 3-tier system. So you're either a manufacturer or you're a distributor or you are a retailer, bar, restaurant. And if you own into one of those, you cannot be in the other two. So for example, a distributor cannot invest in a manufacturer any more than a manufacturer can have a restaurant.
It sounds like something that from the outside looking in, I don't know if I'd want any part of it. I applaud you for taking it on and for having such success. How many years has it been in operation now?
We have been in operation for 8 years. And I'll tell you this, I mean, this, and the business plan was as such. I mean, this is a very long-term operation. I mean, the operational costs increase faster than your profit. And the reason for that is if you're growing the business, because you're aging product, you are actually putting more into inventory as far as dollars spent versus the revenue that you are bringing in. So most of the time, we run it as essentially a break-even proposition with maybe some slight input of cash to maintain what we feel are our goals for production and for inventory levels. Mm-hmm. And that's something where this pandemic has actually shown that some of those plans were actually fortuitous in timing, because we have plenty of inventory. So we've been able to reduce our production so that our costs are lower, our operating costs, and maintain essentially a break even, maybe a slight loss in profitability, considering that our sales volumes have substantially dropped.
They have. Well, I have heard that at a certain point, the liquor industry was actually doing pretty well early in the pandemic, but I don't know if that would translate to a small scale operation like yours.
Well, you know what? I mean, we have certainly seen a tremendous uptick in retail sales. Retail sales have been strong. Mostly consumers are at home, so they're buying in retail. It's a lot cheaper for consumers than going to a bar or restaurant to buy a cocktail. Right. So we're seeing a trend where higher end products are selling relatively well. So just to give you some raw numbers, if you could say that retail was maybe a third of our prior wholesale sales, so a third in retail, a third in bars, and a third in restaurants. Retail has now in the old numbers would essentially be 60% of that gross number if we were at the old revenue. So we have essentially double our retail presence. And that really has helped us a lot. With that said, we are in 4 states, so we are shipping in California, Nevada, Arizona, and we were doing New Jersey. New Jersey was a casualty of the pandemic, and that we're just not able to support it. We can't travel out there. We just can't support it appropriately. So those sales have essentially decreased substantially. However, we still see strong support in Nevada, and we see about even support in Arizona. I mean, that's been fairly steady. Most of our presence in Arizona was retail based. Mm-hmm. Nevada, surprisingly, has actually grown a little bit. And I say surprisingly because we had a good presence in some of the properties on the Strip, the Las Vegas Strip, which we felt would go down. And they have gone down somewhat, but, many liquor stores are selling very, very well our product.
Good. I wanted one more follow-up on your product. You hinted at some aging. Is there anything that's currently aging that you're thinking we're going to bottle that one in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I mean, is that the sort of long-term investment we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of our barrels that we are actually shipping to consumers now are between 4 and 5 year old products. Uh-huh. And we have some that are pretty darn close to 7.5 years now. Huh. We're 8 years and 3 months in since we started producing. And some of those products, are doing very, very well. We have some stuff that we have not released to the general public yet. We have done, which I'm quite proud of this, we did a smoked or peated single malt, which is essentially a Scotch style whiskey. And that will be coming out probably in another 2 years. And the grains were extremely difficult to obtain. We managed to get grains from the U.S. It's actually a barley mix. But more importantly, the company that malted the barley and did the peat brought the peat in from Europe and was able to recreate some of the old techniques that are used out there. So we're really curious to see how that's going to turn out. I mean, we have tasted it along the way, and I can say that it's coming out very nicely so far. We have a lot of collaborations that we do as well that have come out and will continue to come out. I'll give you an example. We have a collaboration with the Marriott Marquis Hotel in downtown San Diego, where they actually are beekeepers. So in the roof of the hotel, they actually have beehives. And we have done a collaboration where they provide us with honey. We age some of the honey in barrels. They get the honey back, and then we actually will finish a 4 or 5 year old bourbon in those barrels. That product is fantastic. It is available only through the Marriott Marquis, but it's a very unique product. We do a lot of collaborations with breweries as well, from Modern Times to AleSmith to Ballast Point, where we will provide them with some of our barrels that have been that we empty, and then they will age a beer for anywhere from 6 months or 1.5 years in those barrels. And when they're done, they will return the barrels to us, and we'll finish a product in those barrels again, somewhere between 6 months and 18 months. And then we'll do a joint release. Well, we'll release the beer and the whiskey at the same time. And that has
a well-seasoned cast iron pan. I mean, there's just a lot of flavor going forward, it sounds like, the way that you talk about these barrels.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the barrels, the nice thing about the barrels is they're white American oak, which is a hardwood, as you know, but the alcohol actually seeps into the wood slowly over time. So when you put a beer in there, be it a stout or whatever it is that you're going to put in there, it actually migrates into the barrel. So when you put the alcohol back into the barrel, the flavor of that beer will actually leach out of the barrel and back into the whiskey. Yes. And it lends for a wonderful flavor. I mean, it's very different sometimes than what you would expect, but it's just wonderful. And we did the same thing with a coffee manufacturer here called Mostra Coffee, where they took a barrel and they aged one of their cold brews on our barrel. And then we got that back. And I mean, I got to tell you, a bourbon with coffee tone undertones, I mean, it was fantastic.
That sounds great. That bitter edge sort of counteracting the sweetness of the mash. It sounds fantastic.
It was incredible. It actually,
where I'm going the next time I'm in San Diego.
You know, it actually had some great chocolate undertones. I mean, it was just it was a very memorable experience.
Well, I want to pivot now because this is all so interesting. One more question from a listener. What do you think separates Malahat? And forgive me, where does the emphasis go on which syllable? Malahat, thank you. What do you think separates Malahat spirits from other distilleries in San Diego and Southern California? And she notes that he or she notes that they are from that area.
Oh, perfect. Well, I look forward to seeing them sometime in the distillery, and they can feel free to send me an email, and more than happy to meet them. And for those that are listening, we actually have hosted several Cornell alumni events in San Diego at the distillery, and I look forward to hosting many more once we get past the pandemic. So good question. As far as in San Diego, so Malahat was the first fully permitted distillery in San Diego.
Wow.
Ballast Point Brewing was actually distilling in their facility, but they were not necessarily permitted per se. So, and then they migrated into Cutwater and something else. So we're really the oldest distillery in San Diego that has been in that operation, aside from Ballast Point moving into Cutwater. So we have a tremendous amount of experience in what we're doing. Call us the granddaddy of this. There's some other great distillers in town as well, but we definitely have a lot more experience than most. As far as Southern California, I mean, I think it's again that. I mean, when we started Malahat Spirits in 2012, there were about, call it 400 distilleries nationwide. Today, there's probably 3,200 distilleries nationwide. So the growth has been explosive. The reality of it is that you cannot beat experience. And we're very creative. We love to experiment. We did a ton of experimentation. I mean, give you an example. I mean, our rum, you would say, well, it's just molasses and yeast and you ferment it, but it's way more than that. I mean, we actually blend two different types of molasses, both from the Gulf Coast of the United States. One is, high sulfur, the other one is low sulfur. One is dark, one is lighter. Different sugar contents. And by getting the right ingredients and the right blends, you can actually create very unique flavors. And that's what we have done. I mean, we have gone out and create something that's very unique, something that we enjoy, and we think that you will enjoy as well. I'll tell you this. I mean, when we came out with our spice rum first. And that was a great experience because we actually entered the San Francisco World Spirits Competition with that rum. Uh-huh. And that rum won a double gold medal in San Francisco.
Wow.
And that was before we actually went public, before we actually opened our product line to the public.
Were you surprised?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When they called us, they called us to verify that we were actually a real distillery. Which we were able to provide them our licenses and documentation. It was remarkable. Shortly after that, we had, Young's Market, which is, now they have merged, so they're national. But at the time, they were the largest distributor in the West Coast. Mm-hmm. They approached us, and they wanted to be a sole distributor. And I mean, they're massive. They're a $3 billion company. So they took us on, and the rest is history. I mean, they helped us a lot, to grow our brand name, to grow our product line. They've been a reasonably good partner. These times are tough. I mean, because they have many masters to serve. I mean, they also sell many of the big brands that you see every day.
Sure.
But they have done a reasonably good job just promoting our brand and making sure that we are at every place that we can be at.
That was the question. So that's a distribution opportunity for your operation. I mean, you must have had to think a lot about scale, right? And
No,
diversity
absolutely.
of product. What are you going to do there? I mean, this all, what I wanted to get to was we jumped right from JCI to this, but you talked about owning your own business before that. And I think that's a pivotal step we missed in your career. Can I ask you to go back to when you left JCI and you decided to go into your next phase of your career, right? So entrepreneurship, business ownership, that's a big step to take. How did you do that?
Well, that was a big risk for sure. We left Michigan and a job that I very much loved. Some people have great careers. Some people, don't like what they do, but they still do it. I mean, I had a job that I absolutely adored. I mean, I loved my job up there, but there were not a lot of opportunities for my wife, and my family was out here in Southern California, and my family being super important to me. I had young kids at the time, and I wanted my wife. She needed a better opportunity for her, and I mean, she's uber important to me as well. So we decided to move to Southern California so she could pursue her opportunities. I left JCI. I consulted for them for a little bit while I figured out what I wanted to do. I found a small company that did millwork, that were doing kitchen cabinets and that type of thing. I always loved working with my hands, loved woodworking. I mean, I was an operational thing. The company had 5 employees at the time. So I purchased a company from a husband and wife that were retiring. I mean, they were done. They had done it for many, many years. And again, it was small, 5,000 square feet, 5 employees, nothing major. We developed a store fixture, so a point of sale fixture that seemed to take off. Charlotte Russe was a small customer when I bought, and then all of a sudden they started growing like crazy. I mean, they wanted our fixture everywhere. And we sold it to Wet Seal. We sold to a number of other entities, those fixtures. And, 4 years later, I had an organization that was 67 employees, 50,000 square feet of manufacturing, selling nationwide. It was a remarkable amount of growth. It was not without pain. I mean, when you grow that fast, I mean, there's always learning curves, but it was a great experience. And through those 4 years, I mean, it was just a wild ride. I mean, it was just going 90 miles an hour all the time, working 60 plus work hours a week. But it was just, I learned a ton. I mean, because that was my first experience into entrepreneurship. You learn by trial by fire. I mean, you're just doing things and just hoping you're getting them right. And, if you're open-minded and you are being advised by the right people and you're listening, you can certainly learn a lot from the more experienced people who have done this.
I think that's a really important point that I'm going to ask you to elaborate on is listening to the right people, right? I mean, these sorts of opportunities and business development, this kind of growth doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? I mean, you have to have strong arms around you. You have to have advisors. How do you know who to listen to? What are the resources that really got you where you were 4 years in? 10 times your workforce.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you listen to people, are industry experts or so-called industry experts. I mean, you learn that some may or may not be. I always rely on family, be my wife or my brother's family, my parents, all that. You listen to friends, that are going to give you an honest opinion and are not just going to tell you what you want to hear. And it's once you get past the people telling you what they think you want to hear, you actually get the truth. Then you really build a relationship with those people that are going to guide you and give you some solid advice towards what you need to do going forward. And again, I said at the beginning, I think, the most important thing in business to me, whether you're working for a Fortune 100 company or, you're an entrepreneur, you're working for, a small startup, is you have to be flexible. You have to look for opportunities, and you have to be open for change. A lot of people don't like change, but change can be good. Change can be a great thing for anyone. And I think that flexibility is what enables entrepreneurs in particular, but anyone, to really grow as a person and in business. And that, to that extent, the company, we had 2008, which, was probably one of the worst economic times in the US history, aside from probably the Great Depression itself. And it was devastating for many economies. And my company suffered tremendously. And we finally divested ourselves of the company. And it was not an easy thing. It was, financially difficult and personally difficult. But it opened a ton of doors after that. I mean, I got into real estate, I got into the distillery, and I feel like today we have made a tremendous amount of progress to get back to where we were and learn from the experience. And, it's in business and as an entrepreneur, sometimes you have to make the very, very hard decisions that are unpopular. But that's what leaders do. I mean, they make the hard decisions when they need to be made.
2008, after the crisis, was not a terrible time to get into real estate.
No.
You had the capital. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was very fortunate in that respect. Timing was good. And again, it's about being flexible and about looking at opportunities as they come. And I had the opportunity to get into real estate at the right time, and was able to raise funds through family. And that company has done tremendously well. I mean, I can't, I'm grateful for what we have accomplished. And the support I have had along the way has been great. So, well, and that's actually what enables me to do Malahat as well, because Malahat is an 8-year project, with no income from it, which I could not do unless I had the flexibility to do something that allowed me to actually spend time in Malahat and do that.
Well, we're reaching the conclusion of when we said we would end, but we started 20 minutes late. So I'm going to beg those who can stick with us to stick around a little longer if you're enjoying it. I'm certainly enjoying it. I want to go touch back at Cornell for a minute here. But before we do that, Tony promised me that he would show me how to make a real mojito. And so he suggested that I get all of the materials in play here. So I spent a little time getting ready, and we're about to get an education from Tony Grillo, Puerto Rican born rum distillery owner, how to make a proper mojito. So he told me to make simple syrup, and I did that infused with ginger. I've got a shaker here with ice. And Tony, what else? What do I do next?
All right, so let's put the mint in your hand, and just you can smack it a couple of times. What you want to do is release the natural oils. All right. If you're really angry, then you can do more than twice. All
right.
There you go. Yeah, you can go ahead and put it in the shaker.
No, I dropped it.
Right. Add a little bit of lime juice to that, about 3/4 of an ounce.
3/4 of an ounce. All right. There we
give
go.
or take.
That's good.
And then add a little bit of your simple syrup. I mean, I would say just a little squirt.
Okay.
That's good right there.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then go ahead and add your rum.
All right.
About 1.5 ounces, or
because I'm not in New Jersey or the 3 other states mentioned, I have a non-Malahat rum. I hate to admit it, so I'm just not even going to show you the bottle.
Well, we'll have to fix that.
All right. So now I've got the shaker, and now I do this.
Yeah, correct. You put it in there. Give it a good 10, 15 seconds stir. Don't spill it anywhere.
7, 8.
Keep going a little more.
A little more?
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, go to town. Show us your strength there.
Like I'm smacking mint, that kind of energy?
Exactly. There, now you're talking. All right. All right, wow. Go ahead and now take the lid off and put your strainer on it.
So that's part of I've got a strainer ready to go.
Perfect. Just go ahead and
glass with
it in. And then you can top it off with a little club soda.
Oh yeah, I've got club soda. All right. We're going to sleep well here in Ithaca, New York tonight. If we can.
We're going to call this a COVID remedy.
A splash?
Sure, yeah, just a splash of soda.
Okay.
There you go. Just gives it a little bubbly. And then you can
Are you going to join me in a drink, Tony?
Yeah, I'm actually going to partake, but I'm going to do one of our bourbon whiskeys.
Oh, that's a bourbon that you made at Malahat?
Yeah. This is one of our Malahat specialties.
Okay.
So it's our bourbon whiskeys. Actually, cheers is a
cheers.
wheated bourbon,
for all of
very
our
much like Pappy Van Winkle and Weller and all those. Cheers.
Wow.
Refreshing?
That is awesome.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, that simple syrup recipe that I send you is very straightforward, and your addition of ginger was a very smart one. I think the ginger kicks it up a notch.
Well, that was your suggestion. Tony's, the distillery makes a ginger flavored rum or infused rum of some kind. So back to Cornell now, the reason that I wanted to ask you about your time at Cornell working with SHPE. So that's the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers. And also I wanted to ask you about your current relationship with Cornell.
Well, you know what? I mean, SHPE was very important for me when I was at Cornell. I started working my freshman year with a gentleman in admissions, John Belinda, I think it was.
Oh yeah, I know who John Belinda is. Wow.
Yeah. So he when I came in, they wanted to be able to get more minorities, Hispanic minorities, into Cornell. Mm-hmm. And they had mixed success. And it had a lot to do with where and how they were recruiting and the people that they were bringing in. Very, very interesting. I worked with him my freshman year, and then we decided to start launching some programs in New York City to actually get Hispanics to apply to Cornell that were qualified. And the goal was to have Hispanics that would be able to graduate, to have a 4-year success rate that was higher than what they had at the time. So I started working with SHPE, and in my sophomore year, I was just a member of the group, trying to understand where people were applying from, what schools in New York City or surrounding areas, what boroughs. And we had pretty good success that year with our recruiting class. And what we saw was the graduating rates were improved. And I didn't see that while I was there, but we saw that post my time at Cornell. So then I became president of SHPE, and I did that for 2 years, my junior and senior year. And it was great to be able to influence not only the incoming classes with guidance and information, but also to have a great group of friendships that developed. And also to be able to leverage our relationships to go into different areas and bring more people into Cornell, more minorities. And to date, that's still our focus. I mean, my family is heavily focused on bringing underrepresented minorities and education. My parents have set up a foundation where we have 27 scholars to date, and I give them a ton of credit for all the work that they have done to build this to where it's at. And we have scholars in many, many schools across the U.S. that we support and that we want to see, graduate. And we don't just give a scholarship, and we follow up with them. We're involved in their studies. I mean, we want to know from them. We have a Facebook page that we for the Greedo Marquardt Scholars. I mean, we really try to keep them engaged and just make sure that, we try to ensure their success in any way that we can.
And you say you've got 27 scholars now, and how many years have you been developing this? I mean, how many alumni do you have across how many institutions?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't know the answer to that, but it's been probably 8 to 10 years since this started, and I will have to find out for you.
Well, sure. I just wanted to share the magnitude and the scope of the impact that you've been having.
It's pretty massive. I mean, if you consider that to date, we have 27 students currently enrolled. I mean, over the years, it's, you know, it obviously has built up, you know, over the years, but it's a lot of, you know, scholars that we have put through school. And it will range from anything as, you know, we'll do a scholarship like what we do for Cornell, to, you know, we do have some fellowships, PhD fellows that we support through what used to be Hope Funds Foundation, which now is actually will be migrating into UCSD. We had 2 full-time students with full rides at USD in the Peace and Justice School. So it, you know, it's kind of all over the place, you know, what we have done. And, you know, my family just very strongly believes that, you know, we need to educate the future generations of this country. And that is our path forward. And then, you know, that's what we do.
That's Cornell's vision realized. Tony, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing this amazing recipe with me. We had somebody ask me what the simple syrup recipe is. It's just half sugar, half water. You bring it to a boil and then walk away from it. And I added some minced ginger. Anyway, it's been so great having you here and learning about what you've done. Thanks to everybody who joined us tonight. This is the 3rd time we've done I Am a Cornell Engineer, and we're going to continue this speaker series because we see a lot of folks loving it, and we love to be able to feature our alumni who are doing great things. Tony, anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, I think that's it. I mean, if anybody in San Diego that wants to come to the distillery, please feel free to reach out to me. We obviously right now we're not open, but you know, once we're able to reopen, we'd love to host you over at the distillery. Okay.
One of the folks here is so if you'd like to get in touch with Tony directly, you can email me at Cornell. I'm at ams637@cornell.edu. And I see Susan Lord from Cornell MatSci 87 wants you to connect with the UCSD Shippey chapter, Tony.
Oh, that sounds good. Actually, no, it's funny. That's Victor Chang. He's also he's a class of '88 engineer. I have not seen him in a long, long time, but he and I played volleyball together post Cornell in Ann Arbor, Michigan for many years.
Well, great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And we'll be in touch soon with the next installment of I Am a Cornell Engineer. Tony, really great to spend time with you. Thanks, everybody. Stay in touch.